lob it over.
Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing on Talk 910. I'm your host, Edward Brown. I'm proud to have as my co-host Mark Hunt of Pacific Private Money, one of California's fastest growing mortgage investment firms, and Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for 3 vacations given away during each commercial break. That's right, we're giving away 9 vacations during this show, and the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but they are sponsored by Lighthouse Resort and Marina, which is located 1 hour northeast of San Francisco. And the vacations are free. Their only request, $75 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. I actually just spent the night there last night, and they just remodeled some cabins. So it's very, very nice.
And the weather's nice this time of year.
Oh, that's great. It was actually very hot. Okay, our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on television, Comcast Channel 26, AT&T Channel 99. Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 6 p.m. Today's trivia theme is last episodes on TV. Thought we had some fun with that.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, we're going to start off with you.
Well, we got some couple of real estate guys here. Rob Spinoza, conventional mortgage broker, and I'm a private money mortgage broker. And we had some, mortgage news in the news this week. The biggest one, Rob, was the latest round of, I guess, mortgage loan compliance laws that were supposed to go into effect starting August 1st. Right. And in fact, all spring long, we were hearing, God, they got to delay that. Or the industry is asking the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, that new industry that was created under Dodd-Frank. A lot of the lending groups were asking the CFPB to delay the implementation.
Pleading, imploring.
Yeah, that's right. and they kept saying, no, we absolutely are not going to. August 1st is a hard deadline. Right. There's going to be new disclosure requirements, new waiting requirements. Right. The lending industry was saying this is going to make it take even longer for conventional mortgage loan applications to close. And we were hearing realtors say they're not going to be able to accept any more offers from potential buyers with a loan contingency, right, knowing that it might these new laws might add another up to 2 weeks to a typical loan application. So all of this staring us in the face August 1st, and what pops in the news this week?
So we just got notice yesterday that the deadline, the August 1st, is going to be pushed back to October. Too much applause within the industry, no doubt about that.
But not for a reason why you might.
Well,
think.
Right. So there was a lot of discussion, and we're going to build this thing up because we revel in this kind of stuff. We don't get it that often.
But government
in this regulatory environment. But we had all of our industry advocate groups. I know the Mortgage Bankers Association and NAR and National Association of Realtors. They had been putting all their energy into lobbying on Capitol Hill to get this delayed. And actually, we knew it wouldn't be delayed itself. The implementation of the law was going to go into effect August 1st. But what we had won in the late hours was a delay in the enforcement. So basically, the CFPB was going to give our industry a grace period by which we want to implement the law. We want to follow the practices and the waiting periods and the disclosures. But if we make mistakes during that integration period, we would not be subject to the enforcement. Okay, so that we had come to terms with that, and then lo and behold, yesterday we got a notice that TRID would be delayed until October, and we all thought that was because the CFPB had come to their senses and realized that, hey, August 1st is typically a time where new homeowners are trying to get their kids into school. They've got other things on their mind, and throwing this wrench in the works was going to be problematic from a lot of different standpoints. But no, in fact, what happened was CFPB forgot to file a 2-page form. So
with the federal government.
So they got hung on a technicality, and so we're hoping now, the industry is hoping that this example will carry forward, and when we face these same sorts of oversights, they'll exact some leniency on us. Yet to be seen. But.
So Robin, in layman's terms, what is this new what are these new laws that are coming into effect that are supposed to help consumers? We're calling them TRID, which stands for
Until Arrest by Integrated Disclosures.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that explains it right there.
I had that once. I had to go to the doctor.
Did they just do a outpatient thing on
it? A trade activity.
That's pretty good. So TILA is Truth in Lending. That's what that stands for, agreement. And RESPA is Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. You probably know that too. So it's an integration of the two laws. What it really means is this bill is being called the Know Before You Owe provision.
Yeah, no as in K-N-O-W.
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Not no, you're not getting the loan.
Know before you owe. Right.
So know before you owe. The primary sort of or the core provision in this is that the consumer will have an opportunity to review their closing disclosures 3 days before they consummate the loan, which is the signing of the loan. Okay, and that's going to vary by state. But here in California,
what was it before?
Well, right now, what happens typically in a closing is the closing estimate. There is no hard and fast time period now. So on a refi, you have a right of rescission if it's an owner-occupied or a second home. But on a purchase, there isn't any cooling off period or no before you owe period. So what happens now, for a lot of reasons, is you're trying to meet a closing deadline. So real estate agents have a firm you negotiate a 30-day close of escrow. And oftentimes you come right down to that wire, and we get loan documents to the title company, the escrow company. They prepare the closing estimate for the buyer, and both the buyer and the realtor are on us, like white on rice, and they're saying, "Look, guys, you got to get us this so we can sign." Now, what's going to happen, Edward, is that document is going to go out, and then we're going to have to wait 3 days before they even.
So you just have to work
And the 3 days is to give them time to go out and find another loan?
Well, not necessarily, but it is to review all of the numbers on the statement and question any of them as they
so that they have the time to clearly understand what it is that they're paying for, all the fees and costs associated with it. And again, in theory, that all sounds great.
In theory, it sounds good.
And maybe in a normal market or even a buyer's market, that might be a good thing. But now we're in a situation where buyers who use financing are competing with all cash buyers, and so.
Well, the idea then is in theory, what I'm listening to is that you've got to get them those documents 3 days before the closing date.
Right, but we don't control the close of escrow period as negotiated by the buyer and the seller.
No, but you'll know when it's supposed to
close.
Right?
But will that be realistic for the terms? What if the buyer introduces additional sort of delays into the process that we don't have control of? So I would say two things to what Mark brought up, and I think it's important for people to understand that we're all for the consumer having the ability to inspect the documents, review them, question us.
Do they need 3 days?
Do they need 3 days to do it? And what about the fact of giving them the ability to waive that? Okay, so let's say you're
let's say you're an experienced person who you can read those statements.
No, I agree. And how about this? All along the process, as we have been doing for years now, they're receiving not only their initial disclosures, they're receiving change in circumstance disclosures, they're receiving their documents. They can ask me at any time for their closing costs. We can provide an accurate estimate to that point in the transaction. So I think all of these things, what they do, and Mark has touched on this a bunch before when I've listened to the show, what they do is they eliminate choice, they eliminate flexibility, and when you have that happening in a complex and deadline-driven transaction such as a real estate one, it creates far more headaches we see than it resolves.
Well, it's interesting. In some contracts, you'll see that people can waive their 1622 section or whatever, which says, I'm waiving this specific right, known and unknown claims or something. So,
of course.
Okay, tell you what, we're going to cut to our first commercial break here, and the theme is last episodes on TV. All right, you ready?
Yep.
In 1970, the final episode of what comedy was called My Master, the Chili King? It's a tough one. The first 2 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. In 1970, the final episode of what comedy was called My Master, the Chili King? All right? Again, call 888-912-1190 and leave your answer and your email address. Speak slowly. Spell out your email 1 letter at a time. Don't touch that dial because the best of investing will be right back. Okay. Now, you make a very good point because, again, in theory, it sounds really good about giving people the information, but yeah, they could have been providing all the time, and then it's like, oh no, after you still have to give them extra.
Yeah, how about we looked at, here's the settlement, said, yeah, we're cool with it. You know, I mean, I got it to them on day one, yeah, we're good to go, let's sign.
Yeah, well, in theory, they don't know what they're doing,
Right.
So they may say that, but they really don't.
Yeah. Or they're being coerced by the real estate agent.
That's right, because we know how those agents coerce people all the time.
What is your understanding of the right to waive? Is it that they can, but you don't want to make a habit of it because you don't want the CFPB or BRE to come down?
I don't know of a right to waive that. I don't think you can.
Some things you can't waive.
Yeah, I don't think you can waive that on a primary.
Yeah. So that means you got to do that too, then, right?
Yeah, we're subject to it on owner occupied.
On owner occupied, yeah.
Yeah.
But you guys
Now, on
work so
bridge
fast.
loans, it may not be because bridge loans are exempt from RESPA by their very definition.
Yeah.
So if it's
Yeah.
exempt from RESPA, it's exempt from TILA, and therefore you don't have to. But on a basically our subprime lending program, you need to abide by it.
So I just have to do it earlier rather than later. Okay, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, and I'll take off again. We'll just kind of dovetail on that.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Humph and Rob Spinoza. When we get to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question about last episodes on TV. In 1970, the final episode of what comedy was called My Master, the Chili King?
I'm going to guess All in the Family.
No. But think of a beautiful woman.
Three's Company?
No, who used to call somebody master.
Oh, I Dream of Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, wow.
Yes, this is Barbara Eden, one of my favorites.
All right.
Okay, now before we get back with you, Mark, last week we did have a special trivia contest where the winner won an overnight stay at the Hope Merrill House Bed and Breakfast in Geyserville. First time we've ever had anything in Geyserville.
Yeah.
So located in Geyserville, it's a wine country secret in northern Sonoma County, is the restored Victorian Hope Barrel House. It's inviting, and you'll be surrounded by the sense of home-cooked country breakfast. Smells good to me in the morning. Enjoy a glass of wine on the veranda, in the parlor, or out by the pool. And within a block of the inn are 5 tasting rooms, 2 restaurants, and a partridge.
Within stumbling distance.
Yes, stumbling distance, exactly. A coffee shop and unique shops. And the cool thing, you'll be able to spend the day in downtown, without ever having to get in your car. And then take a dip in the 40-foot lap pool. Check out the details there at, www.hope-inns.com in Geyserville. Okay, so here was the question. I'll give you the answer. Almost a third of us haven't done this in the past 5 years. What? Worn a swimsuit in public.
Oh.
And our winner was Angelica. Not
How do you come up with that answer, though? That's great.
Well, a lot of people figure out what they haven't done in 5 years. Okay, Mark, turn it back over to you.
Well, we're talking about last segment new regulations that are as a result of the huge bill known as Dodd-Frank that implemented sweeping reforms all across the financial services industry. But since we're real estate guys here, and both Rob and I are in the mortgage business, I'm in private money mortgage, and Rob is in conventional mortgage through RPM. You know, we're impacted by the mortgage side of these sweeping regulations, and a whole bunch of regulations went into effect in January of 2014. And in fact, my private lending practice has increased as a result of fewer people being able to get bank financing in 2015 as a result of what went into effect in 2014. So now we are in 2015, and we're staring down the throat of some additional reforms that are being put into place. Do you know if these are is this like the last, or are they have more up their sleeve?
I don't have the answer on that. I can only imagine that there's more.
Well,
I think as of last year, only 20-some-odd% of it had been implemented. So,
goodness, because
can you imagine?
The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, known as the CFPB, was a non-elected regulatory branch that was created brand spanking new
Right.
out of Dodd-Frank, and I
Pushed
know
by
a
the
lot,
hard money
a
lenders.
lot of us
course.
libertarian-leaning
Yeah.
people are concerned about that organization of basically government bureaucrats, unelected government bureaucrats.
Outside of congressional appropriation,
Right,
mind you.
exactly, who are going to have their
Right.
way
Right.
with the mortgage industry, and it's awfully scary. So, but you know, and two of the things that are happening with this now delayed till October 1st reforms are new disclosure forms that combine what were before two separate types of disclosures. And I don't know that the public really cares about that.
Right.
Because let me just tell you, every time the government has tried to make it simpler and easier to understand, it's not. Because again, the government is not competent in the ways of market forces, and really it's up to the marketplace, I think, to be able to effectively show and tell people what, here's the price of our, let competition in the marketplace
Yeah.
dictate who's the best at presenting that. But anyway, we're staring at that.
It's like that proverb too. It's an easy thing to make a simple thing complex.
Yes,
You know what I
it
mean?
is.
And I think that what we've seen with this layer, with the layers of regulation, is that it further confounds the consumer. So
Yeah.
when I sit in on signings, which I try to do as frequently as possible, one of the things that you'll hear over and over again is, "Oh my God, look at all this paper." And what happens is you just become numb to the. I mean, there's so many disclosures in that packet that they sign in closing for a residential mortgage,
Yeah.
that if you weren't there to say to the consumer, the buyer, on a very, very important transaction in their life, if you weren't there to say, "Hey, highlight this one, keep this one aside, this is your note, this is your deed of trust, these really matter," because they get just, they go through all of that other stuff that
Well,
means
there's usually
really
more than
nothing.
there's usually more than 20, if not 30, different separate documents stapled together.
Correct.
That
Correct.
you just can't be expected to understand and study, and certainly you're not going to read them and know them at the signing.
Exactly, and so I think getting back to the 3-day thing, will they have time to review all of that? Yes, but will any of it make sense, or will they just look at all that stuff and go, these are all just legalese that I don't make sense of, anyway. And so what it falls down to, and this is what I've been saying about what we do for a living, I don't mind so much that we're regulated heavily. I wish that the burden was put on me individually. So when I have a license to do what I do, I'm licensed by the National Mortgage Licensing System. So put the burden on me. If I give my customers a bad deal, come after me. But by blanketing the whole industry with the inflexibility that we have now, it makes everybody's job harder, from the top of the chain all the way down. And the person that pays for it and the person that suffers the most for it is the end user.
Absolutely.
And so that's where I think they could do a much better job of figuring out how to get
Yeah,
that.
but you know how that is. They can't just do it individually
Oh,
like that. They
yeah,
have to put
exactly.
it in general.
I understand that, and so you want the consumer to understand that.
So here's a great article that came out in the last couple of weeks before they announced that they were going to extend the
I
deadline.
like the subject.
The headline says, Dodd-Frank is choking the life out of the mortgage business. And so there was a survey of 182 lenders conducted by the American Bankers Association, the ABA, very reputable organization. It says nearly 80% of respondents say they expect that the CFPB and Dodd-Frank's new mortgage lending rules will further reduce credit availability. And the survey also reveals that mortgage bankers today are more concerned about compliance and increasing regulatory burden than they are about economic uncertainty, interest rate environment, and community bank challenges.
It's absolutely true.
Which used to be the other way around.
Right.
So it's so really now of course you don't expect the industry to enjoy being regulated. That's not the point, but it really is true. We're looking at a situation where this is going to have a big impact on the consumer, and they're not even going to know it's what's happened to them until after it goes into effect.
If it happens to everybody, I wonder, will suddenly sellers of houses realize, that they can only do so much? You know what I mean? There's only so many cash buyers. and they're just going to have to extend closing anyway.
You're right. Once the cash buyers go away, and I don't know that they will. I mean, right now we have a phenomena of tight inventory cash buyers
so
that
you're
are
a perfect
outbidding,
storm, if you
right,
will, yeah.
outbidding the conventional. Once we, and someday I assume we're going to cycle back to a normal, quote unquote, market where it's neither a buyer's market or a seller's market, and buyers do have more power and more home purchases will be financed. And yes, I do think that normalcy, if you want to call it that, might actually cause some of these regulations to kind of settle in a little bit.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it is going to
exactly.
be a big slap in the face, though,
Well,
initially.
initially it'll be a tough change to adjust to because I think it's getting at the core of the transaction, which affects the negotiation between the buyer and the seller. So whereas right now speed is a card that a real estate agent can play on a buyer's behalf, that is going to be severely limited when they don't control that element anymore. So you could say that puts a buyer at a disadvantage, but there's repercussions throughout the chain. It's not only the buyer that suffers. The seller has potentially a better offer that was financed, a higher price, whatever it may be, but it may be off the table because they can't make it work.
All right, guys, we're going to cut to our second commercial break here. Today's trivia theme is last episodes on TV. In 1999, pediatrician Doug Ross decided to move to Seattle, leaving his position as a leading character in what medical drama series? Okay? So you got to name the series and extra bonus points if you name the actor, a famous actor. The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. In 1999, pediatrician Doug Ross decided to move to Seattle, leaving his position as a leading character in what medical drama series? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. When we come back, we're going to start asking our co-hosts here for some email time and see if they know the answers. Stay with us. To drag that out a little bit, got to get exactly. It makes it easier if I go exactly because I can't add 2 and 2 together very easily.
Especially when you're tired.
Yeah, exactly. When I had 9 minutes and 47 seconds, I don't know.
99 medical drama.
I never watched the show, but you'll have heard the name of the show, and you'll definitely know the actor.
Well, I know a lot of medical dramas, but many of them are still running, and I don't think they go all the way back to 99.
99. I'm trying to think of when that.
Because there's Grey's Anatomy, which is still in the running, and that hasn't been out for 15 seasons yet. So it's Doug Ross, and that name sounds familiar.
And you don't see this guy so much on TV shows anymore. You must have seen him in movies now.
Oh, wait a minute. Yes.
I've just had a back and forth thread with our senior VP of appraisals. I'm trying to find it because it's somewhat relevant to the question.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll go to Mark.
Okay, yeah, I'll find it here in a second.
Well, welcome back to The Best of Investing. Edward Brown here, along with Mark Hunt and Rob Spinoza. Second trivia question. In 1999, pediatrician Doug Ross decided to move to Seattle, leaving his position as a leading character in what medical drama series?
I know the names of both, and I completely just blanked out on that.
I don't have it.
I never watched this. Yeah, George Clooney.
George Clooney, yes.
ER.
ER, that's
Yeah,
right.
that was there. Okay. Now, Mark, before we get into your email, we do have next week another special trivia contest where the winner's going to get this, receive a certificate for 2 for rafting. And this is going to be looking for fun, exciting, action-packed trip this summer. Join Whitewater Connection on a rafting adventure down the middle and south fork of the American River. You guys ever done that?
I've not done it.
I have, it's scary.
It's scary. Well, the south
depending how
fork
much
is...
water they let out.
Yeah,
They're at a drought year. Maybe you've been pedaling down there.
Actually, it's a lot of fun. Especially the middle fork, that one's really cool. So you get to tackle class 3 and 4 rapids,
Nice.
and you can even make this one an overnight trip and camp on the 40-acre private campground. They'll take care of you with tent rentals, gourmet meals, and fine local wines. Can you imagine paddling, sipping some wine as you're paddling? So start off your adventure in the gold country of Coloma, California. Give them a call at 800-336-RAFT. That's 800-336-7238, or visit them at whitewaterconnection.com. They have the water, all they need is you. Okay, so that's next week. Mark, question we received for you says, I'm interested in investing in mortgage investments. Someone's probably been listening to the show for a while.
Yep.
But I don't want to tie up my money for a long time. What options do you offer?
Well, the great thing about mortgage investing in today's marketplace is that the demand for the private capital that we use to fund our loans is generally short term.
Right.
So most of the loans we originate pay off in less than a year, most of them. Some of them pay off actually fairly quickly. Some pay off as quickly as 60 to 90 days, which actually is almost a little bit too short. It's not optimal for an investment. In fact, many of my investors, their preference is a loan that doesn't pay off before 6 months but doesn't go longer than a year. That way it kind of gives them, it's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And actually we do get a lot of loans that kind of fall into that. I'm going to need the money for probably 4 to 6 months, which is typical for a fix and flip.
Right.
They usually
Yeah,
think
after a model.
they think they're going to flip it in 4, but usually it does take 6 to 8. But generally less than a year. That's a perfect loan, or a bridge loan for somebody that needs to close quickly or has something in their credit that they know they're going to clean up within a relatively short period of time, then get bank financing.
Right.
Again, oftentimes that takes 6 to 8 months. I would say the average payoff of a loan that we do at Pacific Private Money, again, we're private money loan originators serving the Bay Area, the average loan is paid off right around 7 to 8 months. And that's actually pretty much a sweet spot there. So that's for individual notes. Now you've heard me talking about our private money fund, our mortgage pool fund. We call it the Pacific Private Money Fund. And you may have heard our ads if you listen to 9, 10 a.m. during the week. We've got some Gil Gross spots that have been running now for a couple of months talking about our fund. In fact, we've been getting lots of phone calls and a lot of new investors in the fund. And so the fund has been liquid. We've been making a lot of real estate loans using those funds, putting that money to work. When you invest in a fund, most funds like ours do require a minimum term investment, and we ask that you keep the money in for at least 2 years. So if you agree to keep the money in for 2 years, there's no load, meaning no expense to you that is charged against your investment going in or out. So if you invest $100,000, all of that money goes to work for you. When you're ready to redeem it, you want your money back, you get all of that $100,000 back, and during that 2-year period or whatever period you left it in beyond 2 years, you're earning the income from the fund. And right now our fund has been paying consistently over the last 2 years a little over 8%. Now, of course, future performance or past performance is no promise of future results, but the market as we see it, we're pretty confident that our fund will continue to pay in the low 8% range. So those are 2 types of products we have. Short term, if you want to invest in individual notes, taking the risk that maybe you'll get your money back sooner than what you wanted, or investing in a fund and agreeing to a 2-year wait.
But the clients can get out before 2 years.
They can.
They have to pay a penalty, but it's not severe.
It's not punitive,
Yeah.
so it's declining. It starts out at 5%, then goes down 1% every 6 months until after 2 years
got
it's
it,
0.
okay.
So if you keep it in for, let's say, 13 months, well, in the 13th month we charge a 3% redemption fee. And if you've earned 8% in the prior year, well, then you've still netted out a positive 5%. So we just don't want people to treat it like a money market account, because we do run a business and make
Right.
loans off of that, and we
Yeah.
don't want to be in the business of redeeming people's capital in and out.
How do you see if the Fed raises rates, and they didn't obviously at the June meeting yesterday, but if they do that in September, how would that affect the fund? I mean, just in broad terms.
Well, it'll affect the fund in that as rates rise, as mortgage rates rise, and as the prime rate rises, ultimately hard money rates will rise too.
Right.
Now, historically, hard money's been priced at prime plus 5.
Okay.
Now, prime is 3 1/4,
Right.
and that would plus 5 would be 8 1/4. Well, we're making those at 10, so
Right.
we kind of hit a floor and didn't go below 10%. Although you can get hard money at 9 if it's a low LTV, loan or 50% or
Right,
better. But
right.
generally speaking, hard money in the Bay Area has been running at a solid 10% price for a 70% acquisition loan. So,
Interesting.
but as it goes up, so I think once prime, assuming the prime goes back and continues to climb and maybe hit 6 or 7% or even 8% again, as it has been,
Right. Historically, that's not
historically,
wrong,
that's
yeah.
not a huge, that's not a stretch.
Not at all.
So I would think that our hard money rates might actually go back up again to 11 or 12,
Yes,
in which case the fund would start paying out a higher premium and a higher yield
See,
to its
and
shareholders.
unlike a bond, where
Right.
the principal goes down, the principal here stays the same.
Yeah.
And because he's making short-term loans, he's not tying up the money for 30 years.
Right.
And so short-term loans, they pay off, and he gets to put them out at a higher rate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So for more
The trap.
information on how you can use your savings to earn higher yields secured by real estate, and that's not tying your money up for long periods of time, please give us a call at 415-883-2150. That's 415-883-2150. Call us over the weekend and leave a message. We'll call you back next week, or you can just simply go to our website, pacificprivatemoney.com.
Very good.
Cool.
Okay, Rob,
Oh.
we got an email here, a smoking one. This guy must be very upset, but not with us.
Smoking.
With his lender. Says,
Well, if you're going to be upset with someone, be upset with your mortgage lender.
Exactly.
If we've learned anything.
That's right. And it's not even with the broker; it's with the lender. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm
Fire away.
going to read this in the intent that it was probably written. Why can't my lender just accept the appraisal that I recently had done if the appraiser's on the bank's approved list?
Okay, so I'm not a legal expert when it comes to the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, or AIR. These are the regulations that govern the appraisal practices these days. But what I can tell you is this: lenders don't have an approved list. I guess that's the first thing I would say when you're dealing with a residential mortgage. Lenders don't have an approved list.
Not anymore, right?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Lenders don't even talk to the appraisers. We can't do that. What we do have is we have a relationship with what's known as an AMC, an appraisal management company. So when we contract for an appraisal, when we need to order an appraisal, we will go to our licensed, compliant appraisal management company, and they will locate an appraiser randomly, and they will place the order, fulfill the order, and deliver it to us, the lender.
Now, randomly within a striking distance of
Well,
the
okay,
property?
so this is another layer of interpretation. Our AMC that we use at RPM, if it's a populated area, you can expect that appraiser is going to be located very close to the subject property. That is something we adhere to. We feel that obviously adds to the quality of the appraisals and the knowledge of the market.
Sure.
That is not true uniformly across the country, and you'll hear stories about that. What this gentleman is saying, or this caller is saying, is that he obtained an appraisal through one source, and he's bringing it to another. Now, even if that appraiser is on the appraisal management company's list, there could be an interpretation of who the end investor will be and whether or not they'll accept that appraisal because it was created for another entity.
So even though the appraisal hasn't changed,
Right.
it was written to Bank A and now given to Bank B.
Correct.
Was this a Dodd-Frank fallout as well?
It actually-
AMC, or
This
Before that.
This is the brainchild of Andrew Cuomo, believe it or not, and it did start before Dodd-Frank. Most of Dodd-Frank was implemented. So the Home Valuation Code of Conduct sought to create that barrier to remove influence from real estate agents and lenders on appraisers.
right, phony appraisals and made order
Correct,
appraisals
correct.
and all that stuff. Yeah.
So what's happening here in this case is, one of the other things we have to look at. Sometimes we can. I'll always say, if you have an appraisal, let's try. Maybe there's a chance that we can use the existing appraisal, or it could be revised or updated. Most often, we see that it is not. Lenders take a pretty hard and fast stance in most cases and say, "Sorry, got to be through our AMC. Tough luck." The other thing that you deal with on appraisals, in all fairness to the banks and to regulation, is that oftentimes the consumer has a different perspective on time than the bank does. So a recent appraisal to the consumer, maybe when they bought the house a year ago, to us,
6 months.
yeah, that's ancient history. Well, even right, and so you're going to want the comps to be current. In most cases, you're going to want them to be current in an improving market like we have now to the day. So that's the other thing to consider. Very, very difficult to do. Ask your lender. Always ask, but difficult.
Okay. Well, you sound like a man of knowledge. That's why we have you on the show. How do people get a hold of you?
Happy to be of service. So I can be reached at 415-367-5959. I work for RPM Mortgage. I work out of the Mill Valley office. You can find me on the Best of Investing website. I have a bio there, and any questions, even if they occur over the weekend, send them over. Happy to help.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break. Before we do you know that the Hornblower, one of our favorite sponsors here,
Yep.
They're having a blast this 4th of July. So you can choose from a beer lunch cruise, love that, with free-flowing beer.
Beer lunch.
And champagne. I can just imagine putting my mouth underneath that, just having it pour right in. Or get a premier dinner cruise with 4 courses, or a San Francisco Belle dinner cruise that boasts a hosted bar. You can enjoy amazing American fare classics and fabulous drinks. Skip the crowds this year and celebrate the U.S. of A. on the water underneath the fireworks. That's the best. That's the best place to watch the fireworks on the boat, right?
Yeah.
So check them out, hornblower.com, or call 888-HORNBLOWER. All right. So now we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break, and again, the theme is last episodes on TV. Mike Flaherty left his job as deputy mayor of New York City to take up a new career as an environmental lobbyist in Washington, D.C. What show saw Michael J. Fox's character replaced by Charlie Sheen, deputy mayor Charlie Crawford, in the year 2000? All right, I'm just going to read that once. All right, call 888-912-11.
This is only an hour show. So
Yeah, I know. It takes me an hour to read this thing. All right, so stay with us. We'll have some closing comments on the best of investing. Don't touch that dial. I had to ask one of those a little bit easier. You got any answers?
I don't know the answer.
I
you
know
think TV
I don't watch anything.
I know the program. I wasn't a fan of it, but I'm just aware of it. Michael J. Fox played. No, I thought he played Alex Keaton.
That was Family Ties. That was the
Yeah,
one.
so I'm thinking of something else.
Guess my guess was yesterday or on Tuesday for the sports show.
I don't know.
Denny McLean.
Wow.
In
Pitcher, right?
Yeah, last 30-game winner. And then he
Oh, really?
Then he got into some
Trouble?
trouble.
Financial or?
He went to the pokey.
Oh.
He was a great interview though.
They make the best interviews.
Yeah.
The guys that
You know
have
what
done
though?
time.
And it was interesting. Bruce
Yeah.
told me ahead of time. He says, we're going to call him 15 minutes ahead of time. We're going to talk to him to see is there anything off limits.
Yeah.
You know. And he was like, yeah. And the thing is though, we had so much fun talking about the 1968 season and that whole thing.
No, I bet it just kind of goes by like that.
It,
right?
it does.
Yeah.
So we really didn't get it. My question was like, how do you talk to the young ball players to keep them out of trouble?
Yeah.
So it's like, I didn't want to get,
That is a great question to ask him, though. I mean,
And he was fun. He was great. He was great.
some of those guys, man, they are entertaining. You can listen to them talk all day.
Yeah.
The stories they can tell.
Okay, this one's going to be 10 minutes and 29 seconds.
Let's talk about this one. 'Cause I love this one because you have a different
Yeah,
spin on it than I do.
absolutely.
And it's the Scotsman's Guide, which is for the conventional mortgage. It's
Right.
probably in the residential
Yeah.
edition.
Okay, ready? So who am I turning it over to?
Either one.
Turn it over to Mark.
I can start.
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll
great.
talk about it.
There you go. I want to ask you like a deal of the week or something. Here we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Again, last time for the show. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hahn and Rob Spinoza. Third, final trivia question. Mike Flaherty left his job as deputy mayor of New York City to take up a new career as an environmental lobbyist in Washington, D.C. What show saw Michael J. Fox's character replaced by Charlie Sheen, deputy mayor Charlie Crawford, in the year 2000? Spin City.
Oh.
TV show.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, take it away again.
So Rob brought in this article that was really interesting and caught my eye only because it actually affects both of us, both meaning it affects Rob on the conventional lending side and it affects me on the private lending side. And the title of the article says, "Occupancy Fraud Remains Widespread." So in the conventional world, what used to happen a lot, and I guess it's still happening today, Rob, now, is that people want to get, who can get bank financing, are saying, oh, I'm going to live here.
Live in the house.
It's going to be owner occupied, and that way they want to get the best, they can get the best rate.
Best rates, and they'll get a more aggressive loan to value. So on a primary home, with an FHA loan or a conventional loan, you go 3.5% down. But if you're buying an investment property, you're looking at 20.
Right, so you've got these, they call them occupancy fraudster. They want to buy as many investment properties as they can, but claiming each and every one of them to be their primary residence. Now, it's the exact opposite with private money, because so many private lenders, unlike us at Pacific, because we actually do consumer loans, but most private lenders don't do consumer loans. They only do investment property loans, or also called business purpose or investment purpose loans, because they're not adequately licensed to do owner occupied, and they're just, and so they stay away from those. And so what ends up happening is a lot of borrowers know that game, and so they'll come to us with an application that says it's investment purpose, and then we find out that they're moving in, or maybe they already live there. So it's really kind of
it's an interesting set of circumstances, because what happens on this is there's only, when you get to residential lending, there's only 3 classifications for occupancy. There's primary, that's the house you live in, that one's easy. There's second or vacation home, and then there's investment. And anything that's not a second or vacation or a primary is by default an investment property. So you'll often hear people say things like, well, it's actually a second home. Well, okay, then does it pass the second home test? Is it a reasonable distance from your primary home? Is it available for your year-round occupancy, meaning nobody else is living there? And number 3, if that isn't bad enough, you must not enter into any rental agreements. And
what about Airbnb?
That is an interesting question. We're seeing this come up more and more, because you'll see people will have a property and you'll get these deposits on their bank statements, and you'll be like, well, where's that from? And they'll go, it's from Airbnb, and they're like, well, you can't be renting out your second home.
Some people rent out their primary residence.
You can't, well, and that's a little bit different, because primary, they don't allow on a primary home, if you're trying to finance a primary home, they don't allow you to use border income if it's a 1-unit property anyway. So you kind of have a little bit of a defense on that.
Well, I wasn't thinking so much that you're using Airbnb income. I'm just thinking, just in general, you just go, hey.
It's a gray area, and it's new, and the guidelines really haven't accommodated that yet. But there will be.
So when you go to your lender, if they ask, is it primary residence? Your answer is supposed to be, what do you want it to be?
Yeah, right.
Wait, are you a hard money lender, or are you a regular lender?
So tell me again who you are. Here's where the rubber meets the road. When you sign your deed of trust, there is usually going to be, when it's primary home, a primary occupancy affidavit, and that states your intent to live in the property for at least 1 year. And if you sign on that, I mean, you're signing under penalty of perjury.
Yeah, but then, hey, 6 months later, my job got transferred. And
but that wasn't your intent.
So
or maybe it was, but again, you're trying to prove a case of intent.
And I know they look at where's their PG&E bill getting sent.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
But how about this? What Mark was saying is, so let's say these people are occupancy fraudsters, and they've got 3 or 4 different properties, and now they're on their 4th FHA loan.
Yeah,
now when you get their tax return, their Schedule E is full of rental properties, and those were all just a year ago bought as a primary home.
Now, how would you know those were bought as primary homes?
Well, if it was an FHA loan, it had to be a primary.
But I mean,
because FHA won't do anything else. But,
well, would you?
But let's say
their application doesn't say it's an FHA.
Their application would say it, because that's a checkbox on the Uniform Residential Loan Application.
Was this an FHA loan? Very interesting.
So we had a situation that actually a loan application came back to us that had actually crashed and burned through our loan process 4 weeks earlier. So a lot of loan applications recycle through the system, meaning brokers will send us deals that we've already seen maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times before. But this one was particularly painful to see again, because we got this, what we thought was a great loan application, a beautifully remodeled duplex in San Francisco. I think it appraised for like $3.5 million. Just gorgeous. Yeah. And the owners claimed they were going to now rent it out.
Oh, okay.
They were going to put 2 tenants in there, and so we did all the math, and that we were able to provide them with a loan in the amount that they requested, which was just under, it's about $1.7, $1.8 million, I believe it was. And we actually lined up a lender who loved the property, and everything was ready, but then we did an inspection of the property, and this particular lender wanted to be along for the ride, so we went to go check out the property.
They
It
invited
turns
you
out,
for coffee.
yeah, the applicant moved into the property, so now it's an owner-occupied duplex, and he and his wife were living on retirement income, and even though they had extended family who made money and were willing to, help them out, so to speak, it didn't work.
Yeah.
The entire deal collapsed. So, which was really a
That's
bummer
tough.
for us
Yeah,
because
it's tough.
it was a really
Great
nice
deal.
fee and it was
Yeah.
a great deal and a great property and everything we liked about it. But because he was now owner occupying it, so now we get it back. Supposedly he's moved out and it's now back to being rental property. But it just the cat was out of the
Can't
bag.
give it the genie back.
I wasn't going. We can't take the chance with that, and so now the property's tainted. But somebody is likely to make that loan,
I'm
and
sure.
they find themselves in trouble because it was clear to me that the applicant really wanted to go back and move back in and was going to try to figure out a way through Airbnb of the second unit to make enough money so they could afford the monthly hard money loan payments. And I just think that's just an accident.
And they wouldn't qualify for regular bank financing.
Because there's no history. The property was just recently remodeled. They needed at least a 12-month history with the rental
At least
income.
for half the duplex.
And when we did the math, it was okay if they would rent both of them out. But once they decided to move in, they were only going to get income from that one unit, and it wasn't enough. They were going to be upside down about $5,000 a month on the monthly
Plus that
interest
loan
payments.
size is
Well,
jumbo,
that's-
so it's going to be held to 43% DTI.
Yeah.
And all the
But
other
here's
stuff.
the funny thing: if they're not living there, they would live somewhere else. So in theory, if they lived in some mansion,
Right, they'd be
that was
paying rent
paying
somewhere else. Right?
$12,000 a month or
Right.
something, you go, from a number standpoint, it actually is smarter for them to live in a duplex.
Yeah, it's all these nuances about in the mortgage industry, and all these new regulations through Dodd-Frank and elsewhere have caused this to be even much more so a game. People are learning how to play the game.
Yeah, and Mark, he brought up the article in the context of even bringing it up, and what it says here specifically, and this is LexisNexis found out occupancy fraud is up 36% since 2011.
Wow.
So what does that tell you? That basically coincides with the implementation of Dodd-Frank. So, it's not that the problem goes away; it's that these folks try and find a different way to solve it. And I'm not saying that the law shouldn't be in place, but I am saying that when there's a need for something and you don't have the way to accommodate it, people often try to create it, and then you deal with a different problem. So that's what we're seeing here.
Well, we've talked about how Dodd-Frank, the very essence of Dodd-Frank, the underlying assumption of Dodd-Frank and these financial reforms is that the consumer, on average, is not smart enough
to figure out
to figure this out for themselves and to know when to borrow, how to borrow, who to borrow from. And I do understand. I mean, there was a lot of abuse going on before the financial market crashed, and so the problem is that the government and their
Infinite wisdom.
their infinite wisdom and their ability to
Yeah.
reform.
Try to explain APR to the average person.
Well, that's going to change actually. That's going to become TIP, which is total interest percentage, and then that number is going to be expressed as, so instead of seeing an APR, which most people have a difficult time comprehending, they're now going to be staring at, let's say, a 4% rate, but the tip is going to be like 78%.
Oh, no, that's a lot clearer.
It's going to show the total interest percentage paid over the loan. Total interest
That's
paid.
so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our thoughts for the day.
He's protecting you. Come on.
Problems are only opportunities in work clothes.
That's a good
Henry
one.
J. Kaiser said that one. And flaming enthusiasm, backed up by force sense and persistence, is the quality that most frequently makes for success. Dale Carnegie.
Flaming
You know what he was talking
enthusiasm.
about. I like that. Flaming. Okay, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown. We're wishing you the best of investing. So long.